that was interesting. Am I back? Yeah, so the iPad app crashed. It automatically generated a crash dump, and I've sent that off to Ustream, so awesome. Hello. I'm quite interested to know what happened there. What bit did we get to? I had a stack where it was card, counterspell, shusher, remand, shusher. Did we get that far? I'm going to have to wait until someone in the chat tells me where I was. I was definitely in the shusher thing. I have no idea how far ahead I was of you when it crashes, because I don't have a stream running next to me or anything like that. Nothing has started resolving. Okay, so yeah. Cards being countered, Vexing Shusher says this is uncounterable. So in response, remand on the counterspell. So in response, Vexing Shusher on the counterspell. And yeah, so Shusher can target that. That works. Then you go to resolve the remand. Now it doesn't say that it has to target a counterable spell or anything like that. You can remand target spell. So we know the remand's going to try to resolve. But what happens when it does try to resolve? And my mind is going blank and I need the text of remand. I will attempt to use the computer next to me to go find the text of remand so that I can unblank my mind, which is crashing in exactly the same way that the iPad app just did. Here we go. What on earth? Remand's worth $10 now? When did that happen? It's an uncommon. What? Okay, I blinked. Foil remand is worth $10. Remand's worth $6. Counter target spell. If that spell is countered this way, you put it into its own hand instead of the player's graveyard and draw a card. So the question was actually, am I going to draw the card? But the interesting one is that, yeah, if the spell is countered this way, obviously it wasn't because Vexing Shusher made it uncounterable. So it's not going to go back to his hand, and maybe the key effect of the remand that he was trying to get, he's not going to get. But you're still countering the target spell. Despite Vexing Shusher making it uncounterable, it doesn't make it untargetable or anything like that, so it can still be targeted by remand. And I love the arguments happening in chat right now. Thanks, guys. Remand will fail to counter it, but remand will still attempt to resolve. So because it's going to resolve, it will still have to draw a card rider on the end. I think that was pretty much everything from... Oh no, it's not. I have another page of modern things before I get onto my standard tournament, which only had a few interesting rulings, as you can guess, because it's standard and it's kind of well explored. We had a player who had... There's a Ferry Macabre. It's a black card, and it has an ability... You can discard it from your hand to exile some cards from the graveyard or something along those lines. I've got a feeling it's discarded to exile 2 cards from the graveyard. But it's also a 2/2 flyer. It's a castable card. And I was quite interested because as I walked past a match, I saw someone had Ferry Macabre in their hand, and near the 2/2 in the corner, hang on, I'm mirrored, so 2/2 would be that part of the card. Yeah, if this is the card, Pound Toughness is here for you. It's weird thinking that I'm mirrored here, but he'd actually written Plan B and pointed at the Power and Toughness box. I can imagine that's because you often you would look at the card. The reason the Ferry Macabre is in your deck is exactly because you want to discard it to remove targets in the graveyard. But it's easy to forget that it's actually a creature in its own right, and you can cast it and attack with it and win the game with it. So I was kind of intrigued, thinking, is this allowed? Are we allowed these kind of strategic notes on there? And after a little bit of a chat, we just thought, well, yes, it's okay, but it's like right up there on the borderline of whether this is okay or not. I found it quite interesting. Cryptic Command came up again. If I Cryptic Command to tap all the creatures you control, and also bounce this permanent over here, then Still not everybody knows this. The tap all permanents, tap all creatures that opponents control mode or cryptic command is not targeted at all. So if you choose to tap and bounce, you're casting a spell on one target. And if that target becomes illegal, the whole thing's going to be countered. So you're saying, tap your guys and bounce this. In response, they destroy that. You're not tapping the team. You're not getting your fog effect for that turn, which might be important. And certainly was in this case. I had a player who couldn't understand what happened to Mistbind Clique when Torpor Orb was in play. So Torpor Orb is an artifact that says that creatures coming to play don't cause abilities to trigger, and Mistbind Clique has itself the Champion Fairy triggered ability. So he was like, well, so you don't get to champion anything? No. So that means you have to sacrifice it? No, because the sacrifice is part and parcel of the champion ability. It's part of the very same trigger. So if you have Torpor Orb in play, champion doesn't happen at all, and you just play a vanilla 4/4 flyer. Yeah, seems fine. It also shuts off Deceiver Exarch quite nicely. Kind of why it's there. In the same camp of players failing to understand things that are going on in front of them, we had an amazing combination of things where someone played Kiki Deceiver Exarch and went nuts, made 1 million tokens or something, but their opponent was on the Malira combo and was set up with the Kitchen Finks in play. So okay, so you've made 1 million tokens, fine, I'm going to do this and set my life to 1,000,010. I don't know why he chose 1,010. Seems like cutting it fine to me, but I guess he can't be paying 5 sudden shocks, so he's probably okay. So the guy attacks with his 1,000,000 tokens, and then his mind is just blown. He's just like, I've attacked for 1 million and I didn't win the game. What happens now? And he was just like, so what happens to the game now? What happens? And I just have to explain, well, your opponent just took 1 million damage. So his life total's now 10. It's your post-combat main phase. You can carry on, keep playing. Yeah. The only reason the other guy didn't immediately just untap and kill him was because he no longer had a Murderous Redcap in his deck. It had been exiled by something previously, he couldn't set up the damage kill, so he thought he was quite safe. But then the Kiki player untapped a Flame Slash, managed to kill the Malira, which stopped the Infinite Life combo, which then meant he could make more tokens than the guy's current life total was and kill him. And the other guy knew exactly what was going on, just scooped up at that point. But I just thought it was brilliant seeing a guy combo off, fail to win immediately, and just the look on his face was just like, I can't process this. I can't even speak anymore. Awesome. It was very awesome. Pyromancer's Ascension is an enchantment which gets counters put on it if you cast a spell that's got the same name as something that's in your graveyard. But crucially, it doesn't have the intervening if clause. So if I cast a lightning bolt when I've got a lightning bolt in my graveyard, even if in response to the lightning bolt you remove my graveyard, say with Relic of Progenitus, the ability is still going to resolve and put a counter on the Pyromancer Ascension. So it's too late to wait for me to cast something and then try and remove my graveyard. It's not going to help you much. What else did we have? We had a player who I don't recall exactly what happened, but he was a bit peeved to have lost a game, and he hit his opponent's deck box or something like that, which we ruled wasn't enough of aggressive behaviour to take him out of the event, but was definitely at least unsporting conduct major. So we gave him a game loss that would take effect in the following round. So yeah, don't do that. Take your losses gracefully, please. Or punch yourself or something, I don't know. And another one from the realms of players not believing what's happening. I didn't believe what I was seeing. There was a Primal Crux in play, which costs green, and I think that's the one that also has the Chroma ability. It has its power and toughness equal to the number of green mana symbols amongst permanents you control. And then the same player copied it, and the opponent just refused to believe that the copy then had a mana cost of green, 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 green as well, making the original one really large so that it could attack for the win. And the guy was just, I can't believe that's a thing. And I'm sitting there saying, I can't believe someone playing Primal Crocs in Modern, but there we go. It's a thing. I think that's the end of my Modern tech for the week. That's probably about it. I didn't have so much to say about Standard, except that for a decently large side event, it was like 130 players. Actually, it was 131, but we had 2 no-shows, so it was still 129, which still meant it was 8 rounds rather than 7. We had some microphone issues at the beginning, so when I called for a player meeting, only about 50% of the players showed up. So ordinarily, if I saw a few missing players in the players meeting, I'd just start anyway and use tiredness penalties to catch up and get back on time. But this time there were so many missing players, I just felt I absolutely could not. I absolutely could not start the tournament and game loss half the field. The reason there were microphone issues was because there was a draft open happening, a draft challenge happening at the same time, and they were calling a draft on the microphone. So that became tricky to resolve. What we ended up doing was we waited until the end of that pack. We made a second announcement about the Standard beginning. They carried on with their thing. We had a whole bunch more players. We collected in the deck lists, and we got going. There were still some tardiness penalties in the first round, but far less than 50% of the field. I think it was more like 3 people or something, by which point I have no sympathy. Kim's complaining because she was on the draft challenge, and so she had to deal with 3 drafts, 6 rounds of Swiss and 3 rounds of single elimination. But to which I say, well, you still probably got to finish at 7 o'clock, so it shouldn't have been too bad. You might have had to start. You might have had to start, yeah. We also were the only people who waited until the end of a pack to make that announcement. Later on in the day, we were just like, fine, we're just going to... They were like, draft a card, pass 6 cards to your opponents, Standard tournament number 17 is now happening, pick up 5 cards. You can imagine how that would have got a little confusing, but I think it vaguely works. There were enough judges on the draft challenge that I think they managed to stay on top of things. Kim will tell me in the chat if I'm entirely wrong. So, what happened? I managed to get a ruling wrong in the Standard because I had already decided in my head what the question was going to be. Got a different question and just got completely thrown. So here's the question. I've got I think it was Garal's Messenger or something. It's irrelevant. It was a black creature with Undying that has a counter on it, a +1/+1 counter, because it's already undied once, and a Phantasmal Image, which is copying it and doesn't have a counter on. There's no other creatures in play, and we cast Black Sun Zenith for X large enough to kill both creatures. Now this is the point at which my brain thought, oh, we've got the Black Sun Zenith versus the Undying thing with the -1/-1 counters and the +1/+1 counters. And I think my brain just stopped listening to what was happening. Then they actually asked what happens to the Phantasmal Image. Well, in fact, they didn't ask what happens to the Phantasmal Image. What they asked was, when it comes into play, there's nothing for it to copy, so it's a 0/0, so it dies, right? And I was just kind of following along, going like, yes, there's nothing for it to copy, yes, it is a 0/0 as printed, yes, that sounds like it'll die, fine, of course. Except Undying puts a +1/+1 counter on the image, so of course it doesn't die. Thankfully, Guillaume Bezlin from France, level 3 from France, was behind me, and he was like, he just looked at me and said, counter. And I went, but of course it has a counter on it, so it's actually 1/1 and stays alive. And pretty much managed to salvage the ruling right in the middle of it. And then in an effort to atone for my sins, pointed out that the Phantasmal Image won't have the I die if you target me ability, because if you read that one carefully, the I die if you target me ability only applies to the to the copy. It's only part of the copy effect. If you don't make the copy, you don't get the I die if you target me ability. We had a player who cast a Snapcaster Mage to give something in their graveyard flashback. They tried to give a Ponder, flashback. This time it was Ponder because we're in standard and not modern, and Ponder's not banned in standard. Lost my train of thought again. Why doesn't this happen to me more often, I wonder? Except she'd done all this in her opponent's turn, and Ponder is still a sorcery. Even though you've given it flashback, it's still a sorcery. You don't get to cast it as an instant just because you have flashback. I've got the words perilous undying written on my notes, and I'm wondering what that means. I remember what it means. We have Perilous Mirror is a 1/1, which when it dies it gets to deal 2 damage to target creature. Yes, or player, probably. Something along those lines. And there's a small undying guy, 2/1 with haste, Strangle Root Geist, I'm guessing is its name, something along those lines. So the question was, if Strangle Root Geist attacks and is blocked by Perilous Mirror, can it kill it both times? Can it kill it in combat, and then after it undies, kill it with the 2 damage ability? And the answer is no, because although they resolve in that order, no, in fact they don't even resolve in that order. I'm talking rubbish. They would resolve in that order if the Perilous Mirror attacked and the guy's blocked. But regardless, the triggered ability for Undying and the triggered ability for I will deal 2 damage to something, they both go on the stack before either of them is resolved. And in order to put the Perilous Mirror's ability on the stack, you have to target a creature. So regardless of whose turn it is, and therefore which way around they're going to resolve, you never have something to pick as a target. So in this case, where they were the only 2 creatures in play at the beginning of the question, you're going to have to target a player with that. Then somewhere we put the standings up at round 7 of this tournament, and someone told us that their points were wrong, and then they tried to claim that the result slip that we eventually found, and I don't know how we found it quite so efficiently, but we found the result slip from round 1 had been entered wrong. Their very first round had been entered wrong. Sorry, I'm saying it had been entered wrong. I'm misspeaking there. It had been entered absolutely correctly. It had entered exactly how it was on the slip. The slip was filled out incorrectly, but the player had signed it. And as you probably know, when you print pairings for a round, you get each individual player's point total next to their name. So that points total had been wrong in round 2, round 3, round 4, round 5, round 6, in the standings for round 7, and in the pairings for round 7. He's had something like 7 opportunities to notice that his points total is wrong, and he's only figured it out now. End result's probably the same, even if he noticed it fairly quickly. The points total standing, he reported and signed a sheet of paper that said that he lost in round 1. Therefore, he lost in round 1. Unfortunate, but there you go. If it had turned out the scorekeeper had done it wrong, then we'd be having a different discussion. We'd have to fix it. We'd have no choice. It would be very unfortunate that we obviously couldn't do anything about the pairing history that had been completely mangled for the whole tournament, but we would probably have to fix it. Anyway, then this is when we get to the question that didn't actually happen, it did happen, but it happened in like a little team draft that some players were unofficially doing on the side, and Daniel Royd came to me and asked me this one, and I thought this was really good. So this is really good for the rules gurus amongst you. Tell me what is wrong with this argument. I'm kind of giving you a spoiler that the argument is flawed. I've got nothing in my graveyard. I have a creature in hand which I can cast, but it has the additional cost of having to exile a creature from my graveyard, and there's nothing in my graveyard at this point. But I do have Deranged Assistant in play. Deranged Assistant has a mana ability, which means I can tap it for mana, and at the same time it will mill 1 card from the top of my library. So, what I want to do is I want to announce that I'm casting this spell. I work out the costs, including the additional cost of exiling a creature. Then I get a chance to activate mana ability, so I will activate Deranged Assistant's ability, milling a card into my graveyard. And if that card happens to be a creature, I can exile it, pay all as part of paying the cost of the spell, and successfully cast the spell. If it's not a creature, I won't be able to, So I'll rewind the whole of the casting of the spell, which now means I know what card is on top of my library. What's the flaw in the argument? I'll leave that one for you to ponder in the chat. Where did I go wrong in what I just said? The most amusing thing that happened in the standard tournament was the fact that we managed to get the whole set of deck lists thrown in the bin somewhere about round 3, when my guy in charge of deck checks went off for a break to grab some water, and a particularly zealous cleaning lady picked up the deck lists and threw them away. And when he came back, he was like, "Okay, good one, guys. Where's the deck list?" So we're like, "What are you talking about?" And I mean, to add to it, she'd taken them to a paper recycling bin that was actually quite a long way away from the tournament itself. It's hilarious. Only hilarious because we found them in the bin and still managed to do deck checks the rest of the tournament. That would have been quite funny if we'd managed to completely lose it. What else do we have? I have a note written down. There was a judge from, I'm going to get the country wrong if I try to do it. I'm going to say Finland, I'm probably wrong. And his name was R2, and it was a real struggle for me not to call him R2D2 all day. He then said, "Well, actually, I'm surprised no one's called me a hobbit." At which point, a nearby person, I think it might have been Carrie Oliver, said, "No, he can't be the hobbit. You've got Kim on staff." So sorry about that, Kim. I think I told you at the time, but just broadcast that to the world. Carrie Oliver thinks that Kim Warren is a hobbit. Well, I'm speechless. What else did we have? I think this is the last one from the standard. We had another question right about the same thing about priority and fetching things. So this is exactly the same as the expedition map, go and find the legendary land, the Eye of Ugin. In this one, it's Runescarred Demon goes and fetches a card, and who has priority after that's resolved? Well, the Runescarred Demon player is going to, because, well, okay, unless they've managed to somehow flash it in their opponent's turn. They've played it in their main phase on their turn, so they have priority to cast the spell they just fetched. Which means if you did have some kind of instant speed, a way to discard something from their hand or something along those lines, or to play something that involved working out what was in their hand, you're not going to get a chance to activate it before they get to cast the spell. I'm quite pleased with myself that the chat has not immediately told me what the out to the deranged assistant is. I'm quite pleased by that. So I'll tell you. A couple of people have commented on it. So I'll tell you how I think it works. Exactly. Right, the vast majority of what I've said is true, right up to the point where I said that if the card I flip was not a creature, then I can't cast a spell, so I rewind the whole thing, and I now know what's on top of my library. Somewhere in the 700s again, there's a section called Handling Illegal Actions, and it's actually mentioned towards the end of the casting a spell thing, and one of the parts of that says that if the thing you're trying to rewind includes, I don't know if it specifically calls out mana abilities, but it calls out a card moving from the library, you can't undo that action. So whilst you undo the casting of the spell, you do not undo the mana ability. And what you end up with is the player has 1 mana in their pool, and they have milled a card. They don't get to put that back. So that's pretty cool. And then what probably happens is they go, "Oh well, I've got nothing to cast then," and they pass the turn and the 1 mana dissipates. Okay, I'll play another game of spot the hole in the argument then. Spot the hole in this argument, because again it does have a hole. There is, this is pretty super technical. I love it. I don't know the name of the card that's in the example. The oracle text is something along the lines of return target creature to its owner's hand. Then that player may pay 1, and if they don't pay 1 mana, then you return a second target creature to their hand. So yeah, there you go. And one of the things I choose to target that is a Simian Spirit Guide, and the other thing is a token copy of a Simian Spirit Guide. And that's the first one. I'm targeting the token first, and I'm targeting the real one as the second one. So here's the question. When I go to resolve the spell, the token Simian Spirit Guide is going to go to my opponent's hand, and then they get the opportunity to pay 1 mana. Can they exile the token Simian Spirit Guide using its mana ability to pay the 1 in order to stop the real Simian Spirit Guide being bounced to their hand? They can't, but it's not because of the state-based action that would make the token cease to exist, having left play, because you don't check state-based actions in the middle of resolving the spell. So you're like, I'm in the middle of resolving the spell, I don't get state-based actions yet, so the token definitely exists in the hand, and the mana ability is definitely, it's available. So yes, Kim's got it. She said permanents can't change zones twice. Of course she means tokens. But yes, the fix to the rules that fixed the momentary blink on tokens said something. What you used to be able to do at one point with tokens was you could play momentary blink on them. Momentary blink, as part of the same resolution of the spell, it would exile the token and then put it back into play. Then of course you'd check state-based actions, and state-based action would go from, oh, there's a token in play, don't care about that. But for some reason, they decided they didn't actually like this interaction. So they clarified a rule somewhere which said that the token that had left the battlefield can't come back to the battlefield. But the way they worded it was that the token that had left the battlefield can't change zones again. So when I begin to resolve my spell, which puts the token Simian Spirit Guide into your hand, you're not allowed to pay the cost of exiling it because you can't move the token into the exile zone. And something I learned today is that it is correct to call it the exile zone because there is only one. You don't have an exile zone per player, there's just one. And that, I think, is everywhere, all the theoretical rules questions and actual rules questions that came up in Turin. I hope you've had fun watching this version of the stream. I'm wondering if it's made any difference, the fact that I haven't been able to flash card text past on the screen. I like doing it, I love that, it makes me feel like a little bit professional, and like having my Magic Judge logo at the beginning, but I can actually just put my shirt patch in front of the camera and go, nah, logo. Let me know what you think. I'm done for this week. Hopefully this will upload itself, even though there's 2 parts to it because of the crash in the middle. I'll try and work out how to resolve that, getting it into YouTube. I'm again amazed that I've managed to talk for an hour just on things that happened at a GP over the course of a weekend. But there you go, these are exciting events and you should try to get some. Jeff Morrow's favourite question going to a GP is, did you learn something, did you have fun? I think it's clear from the fact that I'm on this stream talking to you about Turin that I had fun, and I definitely learned things. I learned some rules. I actually didn't know about the not being able to undo the mana ability for the ranged assistant. That was new to me. I also didn't know that Shuffle had its own section in keyword actions, which categorically answered the Gaea's Blessing for 0 question. So that's pretty cool. And yeah, so I learned something, I had fun. I hope everyone who went to the GP also did, and I hope everyone who didn't go to the GP will think about going to a GP soon. If I'm going to see you in Manchester, that'll be awesome. I hope you learned something there. Simon has said in the chat that this stream is at least 10 times better when both Kim and Simon are here, I feel. And I absolutely agree. I love seeing the chat messages go by. it makes it feel a heck of a lot less like I'm talking to an iPad, and a heck of a lot more like I'm talking to some people who are responding to me. I absolutely love the live interaction that we get from this. And yeah, like, please be here as often as you can, because I'm better with you there. I'm doing this for you. I'm not doing this for you. I mean, Kim, Simon, you're good enough that you don't need to watch this. I'm pretty sure you know the majority of what I'm saying, and then if you'll hear the other half of it, like through the grapevine, and you'll learn that way. But I love having you here, and I love that you do make the stream so much better. So Simon's pointing out that whilst it does make me feel like I'm not just talking to an iPad, I am in fact actually talking to an iPad. But I'm used to talking to a baby, and it doesn't even understand me. So there you go. I will do my put my logo up and end the stream kind of thing now. So I don't have the ability to stop recording, but carrying on broadcasting. So I'm sorry, there's no Easter eggs for you guys that are on live this time. I hope to see you all soon. I'm back next week. What did I say I was going to do next week? It's probably layers. I feel like I'm doing layers next week. So let's just say I'm doing layers next week, because that's pretty cool. Soon I'm going to have to get to casting a spell. The chat from this week reminds me that replacement effects are a decent thing to talk about. They have some interesting interactions. So there's at least two to think of. And at some point I should probably say something about the new missed trigger rule. But given that I haven't covered policy at all yet, I don't really want to start. I don't really want my first policy stream to be on missed triggers. So maybe I'll just let them bed in a bit and give you some good examples of real applications of the new missed trigger policy, like a few weeks into them existing. So cool. Thanks for watching / listening. See you next week.